Dweezil Zappa! I think tonight what I'd like to do is I'll give you a bit of an idea of how I go about making certain sounds and the layers of sounds that are required for some of my dad's music. Sometimes people ask me about the dinoflanger sound, which is this interesting doubling sound my dad made up. But I'll just do a little bit of stuff, and if you have questions along the way, we can also do that too. So I don't really have like a super prepared presentation, because oftentimes when I do something like this, most of the things people ask me are like, so what was it like growing up with your dad and Woodrow Wilson? And so, which is fine, you know, I can share some stories with you, but I don't know how much is going to be technical questions about guitar versus just, what did you eat for breakfast today? And, you know, so we'll take it from there. But let me grab a guitar and we'll see if we can start making some noise first. What my dad would do is have layers of sound. He would use a DI, sometimes 2 DIs and 3 amplifiers, and he would change the frequency range of the amplifiers, and then he would modulate them to make one go out of tune compared to the others. Right now, here's the sound on its own. So, yeah. So here's what it's made out of, essentially. There's a layer that sounds more like reverb, even though there's a little bit of reverb. What's happening is there's a clean layer that's doing this. So I will add in the distorted part now. So there's reverb and then the trails of the delays. And you can hear it sometimes goes more out of tune when I use the wah. And that's part of the charm of using this kind of sound. Is what happens is if you add more level into the modulated part, it makes it go really sharp and then flat and then comes back to pitch. But when it's against the stable pitch, it sounds like there's a double, which is very different than most times when you try to make a doubled sound, you use a harmonizer or a chorus, and it has an LFO that is very consistent and it's set to a rate. And it doesn't sound the same as something that changes based on how you play, which is why the dinoflanger, the original piece of equipment, was so cool. The dyna part comes from dynamic, which is there's a threshold. If you hit the string harder, it will make the effect appear more pronounced. And that's one of the cool things about when you play it. Sometimes the effect will be minimal, but then if you really dig in, it kind of goes with the accent or the emotion of what you're playing. So it's very different than something that's just consistently doing this. It really just kind of goes with what you do and you react to the sound. So, you know, I can give you some more examples of, if you listen to what the wah does to it. So, thanks. So, let me know if you have any questions about it or questions about my dad's playing or things that I do to try to play like my dad, because that's something people ask, is they say, well, how do you play solos that sound like your dad, but still sound like you at the same time? And so my answer for that is that I've had to, over a great period of time, learn almost like you would be learning a language. I had to learn the vocabulary that he would opt to use rhythmically and harmonically to at least the third grade level, so I could speak in Frank Zappa sentences on a guitar just above kindergarten. So what was happening in that process was I realized that there were certain kind of things that he did rhythmically that I needed to try to create as an attainable vocabulary that I could use and do it at the speed of thought, because I had to try to think like him, which is impossible, but the only thing that I could do to get close to it was figure out how he made groups of 7s or 5s, and it was really just how he used 2s and 3s. So you ask, well, what are you even talking about? He has things in his music where he emphasizes things like a drummer, because he was a drummer first. And so if you take a 2 and a 3 and you just think of them as 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, you have a subdivision within a group of 5. Now, a normal guitar player might play a group of 5 just like, where it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if I take it and I'll turn off that delay stuff. He has a song called Echidna Zarf, which has the perfect example of groups of 5. He does this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So you start hearing as da 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 da, or you can feel the pulse da 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 da. So I had to try to learn how to permutate those things in real time while I was playing my own ideas. And I had to kind of adapt ways to do that. And I started thinking, well, how could I do it on 1 string? How could I do it on 2 strings? Or how could I do it on 3 strings? So the easiest way to do it on 1 string is to have a position shift where I do something like this. So I can keep track of the 2s and 3s if I have shifts. So I have a 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So I can move that around on other strings, and I can keep that going on 1 string. But if I wanted to do it on 2 strings, I could have the same idea. I could put 2 notes on 1 string and 3 notes on the other. And if I was just in a pentatonic box, I could just do. So it's still 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. But then I thought, well, if I'm going to do it on 3 strings, how could I break it up so it doesn't sound like it's a scale and it just sounds like there's notes that are coming from other locations, very intervallic. And I started to look at the pentatonic box, which many of you know the pentatonic box, right? So let's say we're in the key of A minor. You have this shape. So inside that box, I started to look at it like, okay, I have a left side and I have a right side. What are all the notes on each side? So if I played all the left side notes, it's all these notes here. And if I played all the right side notes, because here's my left, here's my right, it's all these notes. So you got this as your options. Any of those notes are available, but if I said I want to have some other notes that are within that I can target, let's say now I'm in Dorian, which gives me these other notes here on the 7th fret. All these notes in there, I said, well, let me play the shape of the pentatonic box and then add 3 notes from Dorian. And some of the same notes also are in the pentatonic box, but basically what it looks like is I'm making an enclosure. I'll have this start here, I'll go here, and then I'll put notes here, and I'll just keep this pattern going. So it sounds like this. So I can start taking groups of 5 and do with that 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and go anywhere else. But then what you have is the ability to mix it all up. And so you could have so I can start playing with rhythms that I wouldn't otherwise have access to. And they're within a certain range that's fairly easy for me to execute at most tempos. So then I started thinking, well, how could I practice this and make it fun for myself? And I thought of a way to do it where I just decided to put any notes to a set of numbers, so like a phone number. So, you know, American phone numbers, there was a popular song in the 80s. There was a song that sounded like this. You know, Jenny, Jenny, I got your number, 8675309. You probably heard that once. So 8675309, if that was the numbers that we wanted to play with, what I would do is I'm not thinking about time signatures or anything like that. I'm just thinking about putting numbers together and just playing a certain amount of notes. So like if I said I wanted to do 8, I could just do 2 sets of 4, right? So I could just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or just think of it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm either going to break it up into 2 4s or think of it as a full 8 notes. But I'm not thinking about whether it's an 8th note or a 16th note or dotted or whatever. I'm just thinking about playing 8 notes stuck together. And so the next thing would be 7, you know, or no, 8, 6, 7. So 8, 6, the easiest way to do that would be 3 notes per string on 2 strings. So already I would start with, right? So that's 8, 6, and then a 7, which I would just do as a 2 plus 5 or 5 plus 2. So let's say I did 5 plus 2, it would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So just right there, well, I didn't play the right note there at the end, but the idea is that's a rhythm that I wouldn't otherwise just freely improvise with. You know, I would have to think about writing that and learning it and playing it. But I started grouping notes together like this so that I would be able to, on the fly, start using that kind of stuff. So you could build full phrases of stuff. I mean, I could try to make that whole phone number. So 8675. So we could do like, here's the 8, 6, 7, and then 5, and then 3, and then 0. You don't play anything, which is really hard for guitar players. So you can make that pause as long as you want, and then you can have a 9. So that could be all 3s, you know, till you make a 9, or you could be a 5 and a 4. So if I did a 5 and a 4, it could be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I tried to play the whole lick, it'd be like. So now think of how many, think of how many ways you could permutate that and create all kinds of different rhythms and melodies. So you could spend a lifetime creating a whole system out of that. And that's kind of the way my dad worked. He would think of rhythms before the actual melodic information. So if you look at a piece of music like The Black Page, that was a drum solo that he then wrote a melody to afterwards. Now, I don't know how many people have ever thought about doing something like that, but it's super cool the way that he did it. And the thing about it is he chose exactly the right notes, because you could take the same thing that I did and you could apply that to The Black Page and say, I'm going to just put different notes to those rhythms. But I don't know if you're going to come up with notes that are going to sound better than what he chose, you know? But my whole point with this is it's actually a fun exercise, and you could even be thinking about these things, rhythms and stuff, while you're walking around. And as those sort of inhabit your daily life, you can internalize that stuff and start making music with it. So I don't know how many of you have ever tried something like it, but it's worth a try if you're interested in that kind of thing. Anybody have any questions before I move on to other ideas? Yes?
Did you ever go down the rabbit hole of thinking of like subdivisions, like quintuplets, septuplets, as opposed to what you just described?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all in my dad's music. It's all about phrasing. It's whatever you want it to be. And he was very adept with notation. So he always had things that go beyond that, like nested tuplets and all kinds of crazy stuff. And for me, I'm terrible at reading notation. I have to learn everything by ear and like internalize the feel of the stuff. So a lot of times people will say, well, how do you play this part? And how are you thinking about it? I'm like, I don't know. I just hear it and try to play it back. That's how it works for me. Yes?
When you're working with the different groupings, you started off by saying it was a pentatonic box with added notes. How were you were you targeting any specific notes?
Yeah, I targeted all the notes that were on the 7th fret in the key of A minor, because that basically makes it the notes of Dorian. So if I do 3 notes per string, versus, so basically the pentatonic scale lives within Dorian, and then the extra notes are all here, even though some of them are also inclusive within A minor pentatonic. But the thing that I also do in my own playing that I started doing at a very young age, because it was just the way I envisioned the fretboard, and sometimes people have a hard time understanding this, but to me it just makes so much sense. So let's say you wanted to get from the bottom of the neck to the top of the neck on one string, and you wanted to stay just straight up A minor pentatonic. I just figured out where those notes worked. And then I thought, okay, well, where is the other version of those same notes on another string? So if I know this is A, and I know this is A, are all the same shapes on the next string? And then, of course, yes, they were. It's exactly the same thing, but by the octave. So as you go up, you're playing the same note, right? But the beautiful thing about the guitar is if you look at it as 3 sets of 2 strings, you're going to have basically the same exact shapes on each set of strings, but divided by the octave, meaning you don't have to think about learning all these other shapes and places on the guitar neck, because they're essentially repeating themselves over and over in 3 octaves. And so the point of that would be like if I'm doing this on 2 strings, if all I had to do was learn 5 shapes to get to the octave of starting over, it would just be, that's the first shape, second, third, fourth, fifth, and now I'm back at C where I started, and it just keeps going up, and it's the same shapes again. But the same would apply here. If I start on C on this set of strings, it's exactly the same, and then down here. So I don't have to think about, wait, where do I put my fingers? Because once I know where my starting position is, I see it as I only have 5 shapes pentatonic, and then every other thing that you would ever play in any other scale is just adding some note in between the pentatonic shape. So it makes everything much easier. It sounds really complicated as I'm talking about it, but if you play guitar and you start looking at it this way, it makes your life a lot easier, because you can start seeing where you go, and you can even see diagonally across the neck. Now, one thing it really helps with is, now, how many of you do this? You get really comfortable playing A minor pentatonic, You're like, yeah, I'm good. And then you get here and you're like, oh, I don't know where to go. So you start going. You're like, is it a half step or a full step? And you're like, I'm going to go back. And you're comfortable again. You know, so the problem with not knowing either the note names or where to put your fingers is it becomes harder to be adventurous when you improvise. And what I like to do is think about having a home base shape and then having a friend on either side. So if I'm playing strictly pentatonic, I will have this shape, and that's my home base shape. And I'm like, okay, who could I contact on the left side? Well, I got these guys, right? So then I go back to the home base shape, and who do I have on the right side? I got these guys. So now so I can play within that little area, and I can go from the home base, and I can step in the water over here or on the other side, or I can now make it 3 notes per string. So I can start playing with all those little different cells or permutations of the thing and keep it interesting in one area of the guitar. And I can start changing octaves, and then I can add all the weird phrasing and stuff. But the idea is that get comfortable with a home base shape if you're into pentatonic playing, and then just learn what's immediately to your left or to your right that you can be comfortable with, because then wherever your first position is, if this is your home base shape, then you know that you could go here or here. So every time you get to a home base shape, learn what's immediately to the left or immediately to the right. And then eventually you won't end up with a situation where you don't know where you are or can't get to the next place, and you start doing the 60s style bends of, which, you know, they were cool in the 60s, but now it's like, all right, let's get with the program. So, any questions? I don't see any hands, so, oh, there you go.
When you're playing over different progressions, do you simplify your thinking to pentatonics, or you're thinking like, now I have to deal with like different scales and stuff like that?
So, the thing about me and playing over chord progressions is I wasn't very interested in it when I first started playing. So I was just like, I want to learn eruption, you know? And so for a long time, I really only was practicing things that were technical and practical for building more technique. But then over time, especially in playing my dad's music, I had to figure out how to play over some chord changes. And I never got very good at all at playing over like standards or anything like that. I would like to be able to do that just to have that as a skill, but I'm very bad at that. But my dad, when he played over stuff, he often liked to play over static things or just 2 chords. Like Inca Roads is just C and D major. And he would like to be able to have like a modal home bass, but even then he would superimpose other ideas. So, you know, he would play weird things all the time, and then the band was good enough to be able to hear what he was doing to change the harmony. So, like, something like this, where he would play a weird lick like... like weird rhythms, you think, well, what would that go over? And it actually sounds perfectly good over like A7. Like... So I started looking at, well, what are the things that I like the sound of? And I started to at least realize, do I like the flat 5 being used in weird spots? So I often will play things that I will force the flat 5 to be in there, like... I like that kind of sound, but that also came from, I watched the movie Jaws, and there was a part of it. It was like when the shark was almost getting to the victim, you would hear this kind of sound. I was like, this is cool. I'm going to play a Jaws lick somewhere, you know? But ultimately, I'm very early on in my journey to being able to be better at playing over chord changes. So what I try to do is learn where I can recognize where the major or minor third is and how effective that will be used, or other things that can target a chord tone that works well for the moment. And I think that's also like a lifetime's worth of work for most people to make that fluent. I know that there are definitely some guitar players in the room. There's one in the room that I just met, but I've been friends with on Instagram for a long time, who can play guitar better than anybody in this room. Rick Graham, he's in here somewhere. You know, now Rick, he knows all this stuff, and he's got very, very good technique. And then there's also another guy that I have not met yet, but he's on a text thread with a bunch of guitar players, Jamie West Orem. Jamie, how are you? Very nice to meet you, yes. Thanks for coming. So the thing about guitar players and learning how to do stuff, we all approach it differently, and I'm always fascinated at the tips and tricks that everybody has. So I'm happy to share more stuff, whatever you have an interest in, or should I start just trying to play a little bit to a track for a minute? Yeah? All right. So on the tour that we were doing in the States, which we didn't get a chance to bring over here, which hopefully we will do something maybe next year, we were playing Punky's Whips. And I was having a lot of fun playing Punky's Whips, but there's a thing that we did recently, just last week. We played with the Metropole Orchestra in Holland, and we actually did it with the orchestra. We did Punky's Whips, which was really fun because it became a full-on rock opera. And I'm just going to tune up a second here so I can be better in tune for the track, but I can try to just play in a way that gives you a sense of how I approach playing in context to my dad's music, playing in a way that sounds evocative of his style, but still lets me be myself, which has been a long time to develop the ability to do that, like I said, at the speed of thought. So let's see what happens. So, thank you. So that would be an example of like trying to play in the style of my dad, but still have some of my own ideas and make it evocative of his tone and phrasing and stuff like that. So sometimes I get away with sort of channeling it better than other times, but it's all based on the things that I was telling you about, the way that I see the guitar and how I kind of mess with some of those rhythms. Any questions? There's one over here, and then we can come back to you. Yes? Sure.
All right. So, again, it's approach. So, did your dad sit down with you when you were 5 and even talk to you in these terms, or you just figured you had to sort it out yourself?
This is how I just figured it out myself. But my dad did show me some things, and I have used them. He showed me this really cool thing that's like I guess it's like something that you could use in classical guitar, but it's like a contrary motion type of thing where, let's see, there'll be too many delays on for this, but still it'll be So if I do it with the distorted sound, it's a cool little thing where you can basically be moving chromatically and changing. The bass note is changing what's happening with the other harmony. But it's a thing he showed me when I was 12, and I always thought, oh, that's really cool. And I've actually used it. I put it in one of my songs called Shampoo Horn. So it's in there somewhere. You had a question?
I was just wondering, can you talk a little bit about the guitar effect?
It's not really a standard SG. This is one of the Roxy SGs where Gibson made, I think it was like 700 of these or something. I don't remember how many exactly, but they were made to be like the guitar that he played on the Roxy and Elsewhere record at the time of the Roxy and Elsewhere record, which coincidentally was the same guitar that he also used on the Apostrophe record. So I've modified this one. I have a Sustainiac pickup in here, and I also have a piezo pickup here. And on the Sustainiac, I have a knob here where I can change it so that it will go from the fundamental to the octave. So, and I set mine up so that they don't go like full on. I like the note to bloom. So it sounds like this with the Sustainiac. Here's without it. I'm already getting some feedback from proximity, so, but if I turn it on, I can also have it on a clean sound. So I'll make the fundamental and it'll be a little stronger now. So it's cool. And then I have this piezo pickup that I have in here. I usually leave it on even with the distortion stuff because it just adds an interesting, unexpected top-end brilliance to it. So without it, like here's all the knobs, everything's off. Here's this is just the piezo. So if I add the so that top end brilliance that's in there, if I now we hear it only on the distorted part, I'll turn it off and then we'll hear it. It's subtle, but there's like an extension basically up past like 4K. So it's a thing that sometimes can be bothersome with certain kinds of sounds, but I try to mitigate that with whatever I'm doing programming in the fractal. But I like having it as a thing. When you hear it with the clean sound, you almost hear when the Sustainiac is on, you almost hear the same kind of sound you would hear with an acoustic guitar feeding back, like the strings rattle against the frets. So it's just a cool texture. Yes, you have a question? It's on this part of the bridge, right in the saddles. Yeah. I forget which one this is. It might be, I think Schaller. Schaller makes a piezo that works for a bridge like this. Yep.
In the 90s, how did you get the gig playing for Jesco White, the dancing outfit?
So that guy is pretty weird, as you might have seen the documentary about him. He did a guest spot on a famous TV show where Roseanne Barr was the star of her own TV sitcom called Roseanne. And she had seen his documentary or something about him and just thought this guy's out there. Let's try to get him as a weird character on the show. And so I was asked by Roseanne to be a musician in the background of one of the things on there. But, that guy was an oddball, for sure. Yeah, he was the other musician in the group. Yes, you had a question back there?
Did you ever sort of need to focus on your picking, or did you find that difficult where you're sort of going to different note groupings? Because that can...
It does. You have to learn different ways to access the notes instead of just only doing alternate picking. I had to learn to do some kind of sweep picking because when I do like the thing like this, if I'm playing it at a very fast tempo, there's no way I can alternate pick that. Probably Rick Graham could, but not me. Now, the thing is, to do that, the way that I do it, I will hit a downstroke, and then we'll just do a pull-off, so I'm not picking the next note, which frees up the pick to just go straight up, like up, up, up. So I'll do down, pull-off, up, up, up. So then it just becomes... So it's actually very economical, but you just got to get used to. Sometimes it's actually really hard to do that kind of stuff. Rhythmically, it's easy to rush or drag because it's almost like you have to think of it like a rest stroke, where the pick stops and then it goes to the next. It travels to the next string. But you also have to do muting with your right hand and muting with your left hand as you're playing. You kind of roll your fingers across the strings because you don't want it to just be... It sounds a little messy, so that's kind of how I do it.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Think about finding your sound within your dad's sound.
And I can imagine there's a pressure either to be him or a pressure to be completely different and nothing like it. Because how do you possibly live up to Frank Zappa? So what was that like? What was that journey like to find your sound there?
Well, the first thing you have to do is not care. Yeah, that's the first thing. So then, then you just have to have fun. You just have to think, well, he did great stuff that I love to listen to. I like to learn it. I like to get ideas from it. And then you just kind of apply it to what you do. So I've never been concerned about what people think of what I do or how I do it, because, you know, who wants to go through life letting somebody else's opinion dictate what you do? I mean, that's lame. So I just never cared about what people thought about how I play the music, because I would just let the music speak for itself. I think if I do a good enough job, it's going to be commensurate with what he did, and you can have an apples to apples comparison. And you can go ahead and compare it all day long at that point. I don't care, because at least you could see, like, I put the work in. You know, I'm not coasting on this, because you can't. I mean, you cannot play my dad's music unless you put the time in, because you'll just look like an idiot. Yeah. Yes.
Have you ever had, like, moments or periods in your life when you've been in the past, but you simply just don't feel like playing and you don't feel like picking it up?
Oh yeah, like, so when the world shut down for that crazy whole period that we all experienced, from like the end of early 2020 to maybe 2020, early 2024. When we started to think about touring again, I maybe played like 10 or 12 hours. I just didn't even play at all. And my dad was the same. Like, if he wasn't having to tour, he didn't play at all. So he might not play for years. And it was really only a functional thing for him. He liked playing, but he didn't need to play. He liked to write music, and he liked to just do all the other stuff that's involved in the process of being creative and writing and arranging music. You know, he had the kind of skill with writing music where he could sit on an airplane and write music. He could write an orchestral score, staves of paper for all different instruments, hear it in his head, write it down, and his penmanship was remarkable. I mean, it was like you couldn't believe how beautifully crafted these scores were. And that's a skill. Like, he could just hear it in his head, and that's what he enjoyed. But for me, I didn't know if I was going to tour again. You know, it came to 2024, and people were like, "Oh, you know, there's probably an appetite for you to come back and do some stuff." I'm like, "But is there really? You know, I don't know." And so I started thinking about it, and it was a lot of work to get it back up and running. What people don't know about doing stuff as an independent artist, for example, typically I was doing a tour on an annual basis. We did like 60 to 100 shows a year for 14 years before the whole shutdown. But when I did go back to touring, I did not have all of the things in place financially that you would normally have after a tour. You would save up some money that you would need to start the next tour. So all of that had been depleted. And I was thinking, all right, well, we don't know how many tickets we're going to sell, or if any tickets are going to sell when we do this tour, but I still have to spend the money to rehearse the band, put a down payment on renting the bus. So I had to come up with a great deal of money, like almost $200,000. So I had to sell a bunch of equipment to be able to make the tour happen. And fortunately, it all worked out. But that was a gamble, you know. And we made it work, and we probably will continue to tour, but it's harder to do it to come over here because the offers don't financially make the numbers work. You know, I can't go on tour just because I want to go on tour and spend money to do it. I have to actually put some money in my pocket to do it, and it's expensive. So as of yet, we haven't had enough good offers to make it back to Europe. But yeah, go ahead.
You work in Groupings previous time. Do you have anything you're working on now?
What I'm trying to work out in my playing right now is I really like a lot of microtonal music, and I like Indian phrasing and stuff. I'm trying to learn how to do some sliding around that can make the guitar still be very electric guitar oriented, blues oriented, but then add some notes that make it get into Arabic or Indian or some other places. So an example of that, which of course I'll probably do terribly, is this. I will take an idea. I'll start doing like sliding stuff like that, and then I will, expand on that to go into other places like. Well, nobody does it on guitar that way, so it's kind of only me, my idea of what I want to hear doing that. But I will listen to actual folk music or other stuff or singers that sing that kind of stuff and try to do it. I have no idea what I'm doing with it. I just like the sound of it. Yeah, you had a question?
Your dad had a fretless guitar given to him, which he said he just would look beautiful, take it. Playing Microtonal stuff, with you thought about some of the more out there styles of guitar design?
Oh yeah, I have an SG like this where I had all the frets cut in half, so the top strings are all fretless. So it's only fretted for the E, A, and D strings, and then everything else is fretless. So I can just try to play fretless on the rest of the guitar, but if I need something to be perfectly well in tune, I have to go to the lower strings. And so that was a very crafty thing that I had to do to make that happen. I saw a hand over there, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
20 years ago, I tried to learn the black bass.
Oh, good.
After half an hour warm-up, I could do the first note.
Yeah.
Then you remember the whole thing. Then you remember all this complex music.
That is a very good question. I don't. The problem that I always have is that we can learn to play a lot of stuff, very complicated stuff, and we'll work on it for 2 or 3 months before we actually go out on tour, and then we'll tour for whatever, 2 or 3 months. And by the time I get to the end of the tour, I'm like, okay, I think I know this. But then if I don't play it for even 2 days, like if I have a day off on tour and I'm not practicing the hardest parts, I barely can remember them because it's just, there's so much focus that you need for this. And if I have a whole show that has a bunch of things like the Black Page, it's just, that's why I don't really move around on stage. I'm like, I don't have any space in my brain to even walk while I'm playing. Yeah, go ahead.
What was it like playing Spinal Tap?
Well, I've played with Spinal Tap in the studio and on stage, and then I also played on Derek Small's solo record. So it's been a really fun thing. I mean, the movie, they have a new version coming out soon, so I'm looking forward to that. But I love anybody that is great at improv, and those guys are masters at it. So when I did play in the studio, I played on a song on their second record called Diva Fever. And the idea was that I was going to have this battle with Nigel Tufnell, and they had it so it was just like this almost Hot for Teacher style double kick drum shuffle thing, and no bass or anything. It was just supposed to be like guitars trading off, which is not the easiest thing to play over, and come up with ideas and trade off. So Nigel at a certain point was like, no, I'm out, So it just ended up being my solo on there, which is like this ridiculous over-the-top like tapping thing as far as I remember. But when I played with him, when Derek Smalls at his live concert, he had an orchestra, and he had the greatest entrance on stage I've ever seen. The whole record is about an aging rock star. And so he comes out on like a Medicare like scooter, but it has like almost an Iron Maiden Eddie thing, like a skull and crossbones, like, crazy thing. So he rides it out, and then he stands up and he gets up to play. But it was pretty good. Yeah.
Just since you've mentioned Van Halen,
Yeah.
and I'm probably with agree with an incredible achievement.
Oh, thanks.
Historically significant body When you play Van Halen, it's like a good idea. We heard you play Eruption.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, before Sammy Hagar called Joe Satriani, he's an amazing guitar player, but sounds nothing like it.
Yeah.
Did he call?
No. No, I mean, that's the kind of thing that would be a super challenge to learn that stuff and play it well. And I was planning to actually attempt to play Eruption. So one of the things that I wanted to do here was we wanted to talk about the difference between using a digital modeler and an actual amplifier, and can you make them work, and do they sound good enough to pass one for the other? And so I can get into that, but yeah, the whole thing about Van Halen, I just loved Van Halen music when I started playing guitar. That was one of my biggest influences. So when I decided to try to learn some of the songs, I felt like I needed to try to learn exactly what he's playing, or as close to it as I possibly could, because only then could you say, are you playing Eruption? If you do your own thing and you change it, you're not playing Eruption. You just aren't. And, you might be doing your own thing. It sounds like it, and that's cool. But like when I see somebody play it, I want to see them do all the nuanced parts of it. And, I try to do it. I mean, I have it kind of under my fingers right now, but I certainly can't play it perfect. But I can go ahead and try to play it, and I can give you an example of what it sounds like when I play it on the Fractal, and then what it sounds like when I play it on a Marshall here, where one of the fun things I got to do while I was here is I went to the factory and I played through basically every amp they make. And here's the best thing that happened. These two on the bottom, the JCM 800 modified and the Super Lead 100 modified, I got a chance to work with Marshall before they put those out, and they finally are coming out into the stores. But I helped sort of tweak certain things, so I could like them even more myself. But when I was going through all the stuff that Marshall makes, they said, well, we have this JCM 900 Studio, this little amp there. And my first reaction was like, nope, I don't think I want to play that one. And it was simply only based on looks. And I'm telling you this because if you have the same opinion where you see something without trying it, this is a classic example of that would be a mistake to not try this amp. Because when I plugged into it, I liked it better than all the other amps. It's just that I didn't grow up liking the look of the JCM version of the amps as much as the classic ones, because to me, seeing the classic Plexi, that was like, that's the true rock and roll. This other one, that's like 80s rock. I'm not into it, So my suggestion was like, can you make this 900, this little 900, look like a Plexi? Because I think if there's other people like me, they will want that more than they want it looking like this. So you'll get a chance to hear it, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. But I guess I'll just try to play some of Eruption with both, so you can see the difference of what it sounds like. Because I try to get the same kind of response, but here it's the amp, and this amp has like a little bit of reverb on it, like a spring reverb. But in here, I can make it sound like the total record. So let's just see how it goes. Thank you. By the time it gets to the end of the tapping, my forearm is burning so bad. This part right here, when you have to go, I start having to just go because it just hurts too much. Anyway, you can see that this amp has a really good out-of-the-box Van Halen kind of sound, but I mean, it's the sound of Marshall. This thing just... just really, it's out of the box. This little amp right there, it sounds good. Now, check it out though. Just turn your volume on just a little bit, nice and clean. You know what I mean? This is like very nice, clean sound, you know. Yeah. But then you just turn your volume up. So it's a very responsive amp, and it's when you consider if you're just plugging straight into an amp and how comfortable could you be to just play stuff like that, I could easily go ahead and use this and add some other little things, you know, like a Phase 90 or whatever, and be perfectly comfortable trying to play some Van Halen stuff. I mean, it just got the vibe to it for me, anyway. You got a question back there? It'll probably never come out, but I did play the song Shampoo Horn with the orchestra, where the orchestra was able to play all those crazy little twists and turns. There's a lot of weird licks in that song that just kind of go in between the main phrase. So that, the song itself, but anything where I worked on anything with my brother is probably just going to stay in the bin, you know. But anyway, the pick slide stuff, that is that does make a difference. Who has on them a really heavy pick? Anyone? Yeah, just give me some examples of some heavy picks. I'll show you some differences. All right. What, how about the one you had? Jazz 3, baby. Okay, Jazz 3. All right, so. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so here's the deal. Let me find, I have an even thinner pick in my pocket. Now this one is even closer to when I first met Edward and I was 12 and he worked with me on my song, My Mother's a Space Cadet. He was using super thin picks. Like you could break it in half. You could just snap it. Like this is very, very flexible. But they're the best for pick slides. And so I was just using one that was only slightly heavier because I could not find this pick before I left town. I only had like a couple of these ones left. I had switched to these bigger shaped ones, which I always hated this shape. It was like, who wants that big pick? And like, it turns out that I want that big pick now because it's easier to hold on to. But so here's the deal. I'll show you the different pick slides on the different picks. And by the time it gets to this white one, it'll probably like practically cut in half when I do a pick slide on it. But the Jazz 3, it's very, very thick. I can't bend it at all. All right, this is that other one. I don't know what this is. I don't know what it's made of. It's even heavier. Here's Jamie's pick. Here's the one I was just using. Already like more of a jet engine. And here's the super thin one. So the thinner ones make that sound, and then if I go to like the Jazz 3, it just doesn't have enough of the surface that gets stuck in the grooves on the string. So that's why it doesn't make the same cool sound. You know, the thinner ones get stuck in all the grooves. So if I try that with this, it doesn't sound the same at all. Like this super heavy one. Closer maybe, but it's still not catching. Here's Jamie's pick. So like, you know, if you're trying to get the Van Halen one and just go, then it's a bum out, you know? Like you want to hear the full on super scream. And by the way, this has a Vega-Trem on it, and it sounds like it stays in tune pretty good with all the abuse that I've been giving it. So that's another thing that, you know, lately, any guitar that I have that has like a super strat type of thing, I've been favoring these Vega-Trems because you can pull up on them, you can do the Van Halen stuff if you want, but you can also do the Jeff Beck thing really pretty nicely, where I have it set up super loose. So it's just nice for that kind of thing, and I don't really have to work at it to make it do that. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Do you guys want your picks back? Some of you might want them. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I'm not going to lose a Jazz 3 over this. Yes. Well, it really depends on the guitar because sometimes you turn it down and it doesn't stay clean. It gets real muddy and you have this muffled mid-range thing. So it depends on the values of the volume knob, potentiometer, and the stuff that is in there. There's different impedance that makes things sound a certain way. But when you're playing, back in the day, they didn't have multi-channel amps. So you would have a Les Paul where you could have your volume set for, let's say, the bridge pickup full up, but then the neck pickup was at 2. And you could have that as your rhythm sound, and you flip the switch, and you've got a clean sound, and then you flip the switch again, and now you're on your lead sound. So players back in the day used dynamics, and they used the volume knob a lot with their guitar, and they used tone knobs too, because a lot of times, you know, a Marshall might be super bright, and you want to get a certain kind of clarity, but you need to roll it off with certain guitars, and that comes in handy. But, you know, if you don't have a tone control, like mine is missing, I have to go ahead and set the amp so it's not too terribly bright. And what's funny is, like, in the case of this, the way I have it set up, the presence is completely off and the treble's completely off as well. So, and then it's still got, you know, enough cut. So, but it's also still nice. It cleans up well, but this guitar has something else that's cool in it. So check this out. Listen to the sound when I play in these two pickups right here. And if I pull this up, it's going to be out of phase and it'll sound like an Octavia. that's something that I like to have, and that's what I have in this Shabbat guitar, which I'll put that on so you can see the difference. Might as well not blow everybody's ears out by leaving that on while I change. There we go. So this guitar is my signature model guitar that I made with Shabbat, which is a small builder in Los Angeles. And it's kind of, a super strat thing where I've got a humbucker plus the regular single coils. And I have that same setup where I can do that Octavia sound. So let's hear what it sounds like in this guitar. So it gets a little bit on the bright side with that particular sound, but with the fractal, I'm able to, if I know I'm going to use that sound, I can roll off the wicked top end for the preset, and I can go ahead and play freely with it. But this guitar in general. Check this out. This is actually my dad's favorite chord. He writes with this a lot. You might recognize it from the Freak Out album. It's on there a few times. But But yeah, this guitar is pretty well balanced. I like the sound of that. So yeah, you had a question? So right now, like this kind of volume would be like the max volume for like a solo, but like a rhythm sound for the majority of a song would be, kind of more in this range. So there's a significant dynamic range difference, but we do wear in-ears, which they effectively cancel out all of the stage volume because they block your ears entirely. And then you can have just what you need to hear in the in-ears, and you can control that volume there. So I don't walk off the stage very often with any kind of ringing or anything like that. It just might be sometimes I have to turn my pack up louder in certain environments, but mostly not. Sure. Well, I have been making a lot more content, hence the cameras that are here. We've been doing a lot more to build a YouTube channel, which has quite a bit of stuff on it now. I just kind of think about making stuff as like just storytelling and stuff I would like to see. I don't really like try to make it a formula. Like I must make this many videos per week and they have to have this topic and this thumbnail. I just kind of make stuff, and if people like it, great. At a certain point, we will look at things and be like, well, how come this video, which we spent very little effort to make, did better than this video? And there's just no way of knowing with the algorithm. We sometimes make jokes about when we really set out to make something. If we think it's great, we go, this is going to be the lowest watched one. And it is. almost always. I mean, I look at it as at the end of the day, artists are in a position now where if they try to make a record, they'll make zero money. They'll spend money on making the record. But then the only place you can really kind of put money in your pocket is touring. But after that, like, what if you can't tour anymore? What are you going to do? So your storytelling abilities and your life experience is of value. So I think artists have to start taking that into consideration and do something where they can collaborate with people, do more storytelling, sharing ideas and stuff, and make it so that people can go, oh, I guess this is what it's like if I was going to hang out with this person or whatever. So it is an important part of everything at this point. Yes, you have a question? I don't play a lot of acoustic guitar because it tends to be too hard on my fingers barely callous. So like if I take a shower too soon before a show, like by the third song, the skin is ripping off my fingers. So I have a hard time playing heavy strings. Like this guitar has really light strings on it now. These are the gauges that my dad used to have. I don't remember exactly what they are, except the top three. It's really light. It's 8, 10, 13. And then it's like 24, 34, 44, or something like that. It's pretty heavy on the bottom, but the top is very light. And I also don't hit the strings very hard. So a lot of times when people play with light strings, they have a hard time keeping it in tune because they hit really hard. And then the string has this like backlash, and it just doesn't work out that well. But it seems that I don't barely hit the string at all. Yes, a question over there? Well, I mostly tour with the Fractal because it's easier for programming. I can make a specific sound for, or multiple sounds for any song, and I can move them around or store them where I need them when we have a set list. And if we make changes in the set list, I can move it around. But I'm able to create sounds that are very close to the record and have layers of sounds that I would have a hard time doing in another situation. Because if I tried to do it with amps, and I have done in the past, you have to take multiple amps, and then there's so many cables, and stuff gets unplugged, or stuff while the stuff is being carted down the road, stuff unplugs in the back of the rack that you don't even know about. You get to sound check, nothing works. 2 hours later, nothing's working still. And when it's in the Fractal, it's a digital connection. You could open up the editor and see like, well, that's working. The only thing it could be is a cable. So, that's there's a lot of advantages to it. But do I like to play an amp? Absolutely. And there would be no modeling if it weren't for these amps anyway. These are the inspiration for everything that's in the modeling. So we can't forget that the companies that make these amps, Marshall, they have been making the sound of rock for forever. Like you hear it and you just think to yourself, I need that. I want to have that sound. It's just where if you have ever been a music fan of anything from the 60s on, a Marshall has something to do with it, unless you're listening to Beyonce or something. Yeah, you got a question? Oh, yeah, what the hell was I thinking? Yes. Sure. So I started making this record probably around 1990, and the idea was I was going to make a continuous piece of music that would last the entire length of a CD. And at the time, 75 minutes was the max length you could put on a CD. And I wanted to have it just be automatic transitions from one style of music into the next, and then have all these different guest guitar players start falling out of the speakers. And so there's probably about 35 or 40 different players on it and all these different styles. But I never really had a chance to complete the project because it started having a lot of technical problems. The first of which, it started on analog tape, and it was on the bigger, longer reels. And the tape machine itself as the reel got heavier and was winding to the end, it would increase the speed of the tape, but it was marginal. So what would happen is if you needed to make an overdub, nothing would be in tune because it was gradually ramping in pitch. And so I was having a problem with trying to rectify that. And then I said, okay, well, let's move it to a different tape format. We moved it to a digital tape format, the Sony machines that were at my dad's studio. And then one day I went to go listen to something on it, and it had erased like about 20 tracks out of nowhere. We just saw like meters dropping off. It wasn't put into record or anything, but it just destroyed pieces. So I was like, well, I think I have that on a safety. You know, let me put it on another format. I put it on DA88 tapes, which were like those video tapes. And I used to do a little bit of work on it back then, but then I started getting busy with other things. And at a certain point, I was like, I should finally get this into a DAW, because at the time I started working on this, DAWs didn't exist. A digital audio workstation wasn't even a thing. So at the point where I learned enough about like putting a system together like that, I was like, let me get some of this stuff on there. And now I finally have it all together, and I can start working on it again because I have a studio that I can work from. So it is my intention to get much more of it completed and have some other players join me on it. I'd like to get, you know, to have, I don't know, in the realm of like 60 or 70 different guitar players on this thing, so that you're just hearing different people falling out of the strings or speakers. So I have right now, Angus and Malcolm Young, who've only ever played on AC/DC, have played on it. Edward Van Halen, Eric Johnson, Brian May, Steve Vai, Steve Morse, Brian Setzer, Robin Ford, Joe Walsh, Warren DeMartini, Steve Lukather. I mean, probably dozens more I can't think of off the top of my head. But there's going to be players of today that I would like to get on there. And I'd still like to get some other guys like Mark Knopfler or Eric Clapton or Jimmy Page, or, you know, some of these guys. You know, you might have heard of those guys. But yeah, anyway, that'd be cool. You've had your hand up for a while. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I would love to do more. In fact, it's funny because Jamie from The Fix. Now, you've got some great songs from all the records, but you know, one thing leads to another. Has that ever been mixed in Atmos? Well, if you want to consider having it mixed, I would love to check that out, because I have a full Atmos setup at my studio, and I did. He was just talking about Deep Purple. I remixed Deep Purple's Machine Head record in stereo and Atmos, but it's a great format. So if you're ever in Los Angeles and you happen to have the multi-tracks, we could throw it up on the faders. Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, well, I guess I could take a couple more questions real fast. I saw somebody, like this hand I saw earliest over here, you with the glasses, yeah. So we did, so anybody that doesn't know about the Lost Zappa song, I made a YouTube video about it. My dad wrote a song that he never recorded, but the only way that we know that it existed is because my uncle was in the room when my dad was writing it, and my uncle could play a little bit of guitar. So my dad said, here, play these chords, and I'm going to play this melody. And it was a very kind of simple theme that he ended up playing over these chords. But all these years, 50 plus years later, my uncle said, hey, you should finish this song. You should play it with your band. So he taught me the parts, and that's what you see in the video. And then I created a version of it that sounded like, at the time, my dad was working on the Grand Wazoo record. So I said, well, what if I try to orchestrate this to make it sound like it could be on the Grand Wazoo? And so when I was on tour, my band played a version that sounded like that. But just last week with the orchestra in Holland, we played it fully orchestrated like the Grand Wazoo with the orchestra. So that was super cool. And hopefully that will come out as a video or something soon, so you can see the whole way the song unfolded. Yes, over there. Well, AI is a very weird thing. I mean, because there's theoretically some great uses for it, but there seems to be some more very dangerous uses for it in lots of ways. But as far as, let's put it into perspective for artists' rights, AI has been trained on everybody's music without their permission. So it's very good at doing lots of things, but the artists that created their music are never going to get any royalty from it. So it's already been launched without any ability for an artist to have any kickback from any of it. That being said, there's some amazing tools that I've seen where you can just use a prompt and say, what does it sound like if a watermelon was eaten by a porcupine and then played through a Marshall? And it'll spit something out that you never would have made before. And then, in those kind of instances, I think something like that would be entertaining to say, yeah, I created this weird sound by using this prompt, more so than saying, write me a new Van Halen song, which it will probably be able to do by tomorrow. So there's cool things about AI, but then I feel like there's a lot more dangerous things about it, like I said. So, yes. Sure. This guitar has Lawler pickups in it, but this one looks more like a gold foil, but it's really like an underwound PAF style pickup with a different cover on it. But Lawler is the ones that make them. This one's single coil. Yeah, it's regular Strat style for these, but they just have kind of a very chimey sound to them. This neck. So they can clean up really nicely. You can get a little AC/DC vibe. Yeah. It's kind of good for this kind of sound too. Yeah. All right, well, I can't thank you guys enough, and I also have to say thank you to Andertons and Marshall and Shabbat and Vega-Trem. They all helped make all this possible. So, but I was really surprised how many of you decided to make this part of your evening. So, thank you so much for coming out, and I guess we'll do a little picture thing, handshaking. Over there, but I really appreciate you guys coming, and I hope to be back to play some shows, hopefully next year. But thanks again, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.